as eaters, as consumer of food, we have a lot of influence by buying things over the food system. You know, if we decide to buy food that is, the way our food is produced, where it is produced, those are decisions that we're making when we're buying the food. So buying is voting in a way. That was a famous book in Quebec, Acheter, c'est voter. And as an individual, sometimes we do feel powerless toward, our sustainable development decision, but this is one aspect. You know, we can choose what we eat, we can choose where we live, although there's a lot of structural factors we don't control about where we live. So I'm going to talk about some different options we have to facilitate access to local food. First, local food was really put on the agenda in the last 10 years, but the last 5 years, it really became a high-profile issue, even in the media. In North America, you may have heard of the books, the 100-mile diet book, where a couple or family for a year tried to eat a diet that was entirely composed of food that was produced in a 100-mile radius from their home. In Europe, you have a lot of local initiative. Not just from an environmental perspective of buying more local food, but also to value the quality of food that is produced in le terroir, in the very specific way of producing certain high-quality cheese, high-quality meat, and so on. And there's a whole movement, I would say, around local food. In the UK, you have seen something called the Food Miles label, which is when you go to the supermarket, a number of large supermarkets would have a label saying how many miles this particular product has traveled to get to this shelf. And making it more transparent, we do have here labels saying this food comes from Mexico, this food comes from Canada, but this is, getting a bit more specific. So this is an issue that's already on the table, but there's a bit of debate about what is local, as some people say, well, is it all food produced in Ontario? Is it 100 miles? Is it 50 kilometers? I just put out there the definition that is used by an organization in Ottawa called Just Food that promotes food security, but also do promote local food. And basically, they look at the counties, what is produced in the Green Belt and around the counties around Ottawa. They also, obviously, on the map, we don't see the Quebec side of the Ottawa region, but that would be included in what we consider local food. So there's a number of producers of vegetables, fruits, meat, a lot of meat, especially on the Quebec side. You have a lot of meat producers that are based there, dairy, of course, that are in our region. Before talking about the different options how to make this more accessible, maybe a couple of points on why should we buy more food. So the local food. The first one is the environmental impact of what we buy. Transportation of the food, if it is produced in the mango in Guatemala, or if the blueberries come from Chile, if the asparagus come from Peru, if you may have seen in the grocery store, this has to be flied in. No, this is not coming on a boat. Some of it, the tomatoes, some of the vegetables do come on boats, but a lot of the fresh fruits and vegetables will be shipped by plane. And this means very high level of greenhouse gas emission. And we also have to take in consideration beyond that the impact on air quality. Transportation is also about trucks. If it gets here by airport, it may get in Toronto, and then you have this very large distribution network that will put it on trucks, most likely, less likely to be on train, to get to the local destination, whether it is in Ottawa or in other communities. And that will affect, again, greenhouse gases emission, but also the local air quality. less refrigeration. So food that is locally produced, because there's less time involved between the harvest and the consumption, or it is usually it's supposed to be less time, it is more likely to, it's not going to use as much refrigeration, and that again is energy used for in the food system. The food system is the production of the food, the distribution of the food, the retailing. So the distribution goes from the farm to either directly to the wholesaler and the grocery store, or through the food processing if we buy, the canned peas or the frozen vegetables, that's considered processed food, and or semi-processed, and then to our retailer where we go and we buy it. So the food system is from production to consumption. And reducing refrigeration in that food system will reduce the environmental impact of our diet. Finally, local food tend to be less packaged. It won't come depending on how it is distributed, but often it will come simply, as it is, or in bigger quantity, not in styrofoam, not in wrap in plastic. But the other aspect that we sometimes talk less about is the economic benefits of local food. For the producer involved in selling their food to the local market, often local food distribution involves less intermediaries. So the farmers get to keep more of their money from the sale of these products. So the value added, the income that goes to the farmers is higher. And as some of you may know, farmers tend to have really hard time in terms not just the volatility of their income, but just the level of their income as well. So making sure that more of the retail price goes to them is a positive thing, as well as more of the income and employment created in the community, especially when the local food involves some level of processing, like preparing meat pies out of the meat that you produce, or if one of your business in the community buy local meat to produce meat pie, well, you have there a lot of local economic activity created through those purchases. Finally, when local food means more direct interaction between consumer and producer, some people see that as a social benefits, more awareness between the links between urban and rural communities, the dependence between the two. A lot of people have highlighted also the health benefits. Often when we talk about local food, it means facilitating access to fresh fruits and vegetables. And you're all aware that in North America we have a real issue about improving diets of people to have healthier diets, increasing the quantity of fruits and vegetables in our diet. So often local food is presented as ways of improving access to healthier food as well. But though local food could also include unhealthy chips that are produced locally by potato producer, but before I go into the options on the table, I'll do one last sort of caveat, is that buying local is really just one element of having a sustainable grocery cart, as I call it. Meaning there's a lot of choices that we make when we select one food or the other that will impact whether the level of greenhouses that is emitted, the level of water usage that is associated to that food, and the general impact on ecosystem. I mentioned packaging. Whether the food is local or not, choosing products that involve less packaging, that's also how you have a more sustainable grocery cart. Buying seasonal. Keep a diet that follows more the season, eating more roots, vegetable in the winter, for example. That will usually be associated to buy more local, but it's also, even if it's food that comes from a little bit further, the way we produce food when it's in season will tend to have less impact on a lesser ecological footprint.